that wasn't the first time, by the way. A car had been stopped in Maryland and bodies were found in the trunk. And in one case, a vehicle was stopped with temporary tags on it. A woman acting very suspiciously ends up running from the scene. She's apprehended. We popped the trunk, and the bodies of our two daughters are in the trunk of the car. Both were badly decomposed.
So you got to ask yourself, why do you want to do this? What keeps you motivated to stay proactive and get bad guys off the street?
The facts is a big cannon against a little tiny gun of opinions, because we've all heard people give us their opinions.
Let's talk about how easy it is to get narcotics in this country.
Once they're in this country, anywhere within 2 days, the drugs will be in our cities.
Because we know knowledge is power.
In this podcast, I talked to Mike Lewis, absolute legend. Again, started in the 80s, working interdiction, still active in law enforcement, and his impact on the interdiction and police world itself is unmeasurable. An absolute legend, absolute great guy. Very motivational. Like during the podcast, he said some things. I'm like, man, I want to go right now and go back to work. Great leader. Someone that we should all emulate, and he's done 40 plus years in law enforcement and he's still going. But yeah, a guy that I could sit there and literally talk to. I could have turned this podcast into a 5-hour podcast, because me selfishly can just listen to him talk. I don't even need to say a word. Just let him tell, his stories and his motivations and the reason that he does the things that he does, and how he still teaches, and his evolution, his struggles, his triumphs, all of it. Great interdictor, great man. So please listen to this one. It's a good one. It's a real good one. And let me know what you think. Awesome. How's life been?
I love that badass podcast room you got there, bro. That's in your garage, right?
Yeah, we made it not for a podcast studio. We made it to entertain people, and during COVID, because we couldn't do anything. So
it's awesome.
now like when there's good sporting events and stuff, and a couple TVs. So when baseball season's on and we're coming to watch baseball, my buddies will come over and hang out here instead of going out with the public, I guess.
Look great, Kenny. You're doing great work, bro.
Thanks, man. I truly appreciate you joining me on this.
Great work. Absolutely.
How's everything on your end?
Outstanding. Couldn't be better.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've been staying very, very busy. Got a lot of great things going on. I got to go to DC tomorrow to meet with our new FBI director, Cash Patel.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'll spend the night up there tomorrow night, and on Friday, I'm headed to the Department of Justice and meet with Pam Bondi.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. You have some very important connections.
So, well, it's just, it's busy, A lot
Yeah.
of great things going on, brother. A lot of great things going on. So we'll see what happens.
How close are you to DC?
2 hours east of DC.
Okay.
I'm right on the Atlantic coast, right near Ocean City, Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah, I live about 20 minutes from the beach,
Nice.
which is good.
Yeah, no doubt. How's weather?
Weather's fabulous right now. 68 degrees today.
Ours was that was yesterday for us.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna get hit with another cold streak here in a few days, but hopefully that's
Wow. No, it's been gorgeous here, man. We've had some great weather.
awesome, man. Well, the kind of setup that I hope to accomplish with this is I've had some amazing people say yeah, like Stacey Arnold, Shannon Shelf, Cody Smid, Lanny Bergeron, and then after you today, I have Ted Davis. So that would be my first 6, and I'm gonna launch this mini series of just interdiction legendary guys. Some that I know, some that I don't. I never met Lanny. I never met Ted Davis. Met you, met everyone else, and early in my career, Shannon Shelf and Stacey had a huge impact on me. So it was cool to sit down for an hour and a half and talk to them about interdiction and what got them started, and kind of tell them my story and the impact that they had on me, just because I don't think they hear it enough. But my fear is if we don't have these conversations with the changing in times, interdiction is going to go away. And especially the aspect of technology is great, but I feel like we become relying on technology. And I love technology, but I think it's a good secondary tool. And I think that a lot of times we Even me, I still get too integrated on the concept of like technology. Technology, it has to meet all these criterias, and not just using that, human behavior and that conversation aspect of it. And hopefully, with recording these, young guys will hear it. Get a motivated to do interdiction, understand how long it's been around, and then eventually, like, yes, technology is good, but there's also other avenues where just communication goes a long way.
Well, dude, I applaud you for what you're doing. You're channeling all that energy with today's technology, and you're putting it to great use. This podcast obviously will obviously meet the needs of hundreds, maybe thousands of aspiring interdiction cops across this country. So I applaud you for what you're doing, man. Harness the power of social media, brother. And I mean that, Kenny. Your generation, I applaud you guys. And obviously, I'm an old school guy. And while I think technology is fantastic, I absolutely know very little about it. I do Teams meetings all the time, and I'm on Facebook quite often. I do have a Snapchat account. I do have an Instagram account, but I'm very inactive on both of those accounts. But I am very active on Facebook, and obviously I do Teams meetings all the time. And but no, I applaud you for what you're doing, man. So I'm honored to be on the show. You mentioned some great names. Lanny Bergeron has been a dear good friend of mine for years, and I met him many years ago, and obviously he inspired me to look for the bigger loads in commercial motor vehicles. But Lanny has an impeccable reputation. And you mentioned Stacy Arnold. There is no finer interdiction officer in the country that's ever worked the road than Stacy Arnold. Ted Davis, I love Ted Davis. I've been to many interdiction classes. Ted has been my student many times over the years. And I love to see him working with Viking detection and doing what he's doing now, and, providing those modern day tools to today's interdiction trade, So the industry's growing, and the industry with the LPRs are just the greatest thing since sliced bread. I've never worked with an LPR. I've never had the luxury of working with an automatic license plate reader. We have them here in Maryland, but that was after my interdiction days. So I applaud those who use them. My God, I applaud those who use them. Anything that we can use to our advantage that's obviously legally permissible within the Fourth Amendment realm, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I wish that when it comes to my state and east of me, like Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they don't have a lot of interstate LPRs. So a lot of the tools that, say, guys out west from me have, because there's more LPRs out there, and like, so they do a great job in the way that they do it. I've had people come up here to try to teach me and implement some of that stuff that they use and how they use it, and without having LPRs in these surrounding states, it's challenging. But I use it simply as like, okay, are you telling me the truth, or are you lying about where you've been and where you're coming from? But yeah, I mean, I think LPRs are an amazing tool, and it's foolproof. Like, you don't have to be like, no, he was just being deceptive based on this conversation or whatever, however he said it, when you can just look and be like, no, you weren't there, or like, you weren't there that long, or any of those things. I think it's great. I think it's a great foolproof plan, and it takes a lot of the guessing out of it.
It certainly does. How are they received in court during suppression hearings or during a trial, their admissibility?
So I have yet to have one go to trial. I've had some in suppression hearings, and it depends on the prosecutor if they want you to bring it up or not, or if it's brought up. Just, like, some want you to talk about it. Others say, no, if he brings it up, then you talk about it. So it just depends. A lot of my experience, younger prosecutors love it. I think, changing in time, and some of maybe the older school prosecutors don't grasp the technology aspect of it. And maybe the fear of the unknown is why they don't want it brought up. And if they do bring it up, they're like, well, how would you answer this question? How would, and the responses are pretty good. I don't know a lot of case law out there that says, you can't do it, or, they're not admissible in court. I don't see how it could be challenged, but anything could be challenged, but I don't see how it would win, because anyone can really have access. It's just taking a picture of a plate. We don't get any personal information. It's like, so it's not like it's a super secretive stuff. It's just a picture of the plate.
And you know what? The information provided to you by an LPR is just another factor to be considered. There are always so many other factors that you've honed in on them. You've already honed in on these factors. That's just another factor to be considered in aggregate. In isolation, really doesn't mean a whole lot. but in aggregate, it means everything. And it's just, I can see why some prosecutor might just say, just leave it out. You don't need it. You've already got more than enough RAS to establish what you're doing here, so don't worry about it. So.
We are thrilled to announce that we have expanded our partnership with HPTRT. Now, if you use the code RED, you will get 50% off all of your purchases. HPTRT are the best in the game. They're founded by first responders, and they are targeting first responders, knowing that first responders need the most help. So if you need anything from peptides to hormones, TRT, even general health, they'll hook you up. I know most men my age are on some type of peptides or testosterone replacement therapy. I mean, no one ever wants to end up getting their ass kicked by Nolan Ryan, especially when Nolan Ryan was double Robin Ventura's age. So check out HPTRT. Use the code RED to get 50% off.
Yeah, we'll kind of just go from there. I'll just sit back and let you talk and tell your story.
Well, feel free to stop me at any time. I could go on all day long, especially when you talk about a topic that we both love. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely love. But, I graduated in 1982 from high school. And I knew in high school that, God knows I had all kinds of different influences around me, playing football, wrestling. I had some really great guys, but I also had some guys that like to dabble in marijuana and pills on the weekends. And obviously, I never partook in any of that because I had a dream, and my dream was to be a Maryland State Trooper. And when I got out of high school, I was working as an apprentice meat cutter at a local grocery store here in my county while processing to go into the Maryland State Police as a cadet. You can be hired at age 18 as a cadet, so I wanted to be a cadet with the Maryland State Police. And I didn't get selected my first time, and I processed again. You can process every 6 months. I didn't get selected my second time. So then I requested my scores from the Maryland State Police, and I saw how high I'd scored. And I requested a meeting with the State Police Personnel Management Commander, who was a captain by the name of E.J. Lennox. And I had never been west of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge in my state. And State Police headquarters was in Pikesville, Maryland. So I made the long drive to Pikesville, Maryland, which is about a 2-hour and 15-minute drive to headquarters. I was very intimidated. I was scared to death, but I wanted to know why I wasn't chosen. And I wanted to know what I needed to do differently if I wanted to continue to compete for very few positions. I know they were processing anywhere between 25 and 35,000 applicants every 6 months. And I was pulled in, and the captain, and it's actually in a book that I'm writing now. He looked at me. He said, "I'm going to be honest with you." He said, "You're not the right color and you're not the right sex." He told me that, a captain with the state police. So I admired his honesty. And he looked at me. He said, "I'll tell you what." He said, "If we have a cadet quit between now and by the time you become eligible to apply as a trooper, I'll give you a call." And I walked out of there feeling like I would never get a call. And within 2 weeks, we had a cadet that had quit in my area, and I got the call, and I went into the cadet program. As long as you keep your nose clean in the cadet program, you've got your foot in the door to be a trooper. But they will continue to do background checks on you as you progress as a cadet. So I go into the academy in 1985, and I graduated from the academy in December of 1985. And back then, a young trooper who wasn't married, who didn't own a home, who was still living at home with mom and dad, who didn't have any kids in school, enrolled in any school, you stood the risk of being transferred 3 or 4 hours from home. And sure enough, I was. I got assigned to the Prince Frederick Barrack down in Calvert County, Maryland. And that's where I learned to be a trooper. And, being a state police agency as opposed to highway patrol, and I don't mean this in a disparaging manner at all, it's totally different. The state police in Maryland handle everything a regular cop like you would handle in Hobart, like that I would handle, as a trooper. I was handling shopliftings at the local convenience stores, runaway children, missing persons reports, burglaries, break-ins, home invasions, homicides, drive-by shootings. We did it all. But in between handling all those calls, Kenny, I absolutely loved stopping cars. I loved being the police. And in between handling all those calls, my very first year on the job in 1986, being a road trooper. I amassed 103 DUI arrests in my first year, along with 62 drug arrests, along with writing 2,700 citations and another 1,400 warnings. So I was getting recognized for my work. And then I put in a transfer request to be closer to home because I was driving 2 hours and 20 minutes one way just to hit the county line. So I get assigned to the Berlin Barrack in February of 1987. So I spent 13 months in Prince Frederick. I get my transfer in 1987. In my first year at the Berlin Barrack, I had 93 DWI arrests. I forget how many drug arrests, but none of them were big drug arrests. Not one of them was a trafficking case. I had some small PWID cases, possession with intent to distribute, only marijuana. I had very few hard drug cases such as coke, heroin, methamphetamine. Didn't exist. It didn't exist back then at all. If it did, I never saw it. And it just didn't, you didn't see it in my county at all, in Worcester County, Maryland. That's right at the beach, right in Ocean City. And then I continued to amass DUI arrest and drug arrest and was a consistent leader for my state. I was in the top 5 every year of all the troopers across the state. We had 1,700 troopers at that time. And I was getting large wooden plaque awards, and I was getting a new police car every year, and I was getting my choice of leave. They really had incentives for you to go out there and work hard. They really did. And quite frankly, there were no quotas. There were expectations, but there were no quotas. And despite what one might say, now the whiners, those who bitch and complain, we'll call them quotas. They're not quotas. They're expectations. You go out there and work, put a good day's work in. That's what your taxpayers expect you to do. But number one, man, we all know that your day goes by like that if you're out there stopping cars and you're searching cars and you're locking people up.
Yep.
And I tell people all the time, in 1986, my first year on the job down in Prince Frederick, and on July the 4th of 1986, and one day I locked up 5 people for driving while intoxicated. Back then, you not only had to process each one of them, you had to take them back to the state police barrack. You had to complete all the paperwork on them, and then you had to call someone to come get them or take them to jail, depending on their attitude, quite frankly, and the number of failure to appears they might have had on their record. But the trooper had wide discretion to take them to jail or release them to a sober friend. So I locked up 5 people for DUI, and I locked up 2 people for trespassing that had fingerprint and photograph. So I locked up 7 people one day. I don't say that to be braggadocious. I say that to get where we're going with this conversation about how things have changed today. So I consistently led the Berlin Barrack in drug arrest and DUI arrests. And then in September of 1991, we had a brand new barrack commander come to the Berlin State Police Barrack. His name was Rick McGee. And his very first day there, I happened to be working. I was in the southern end of the county. I was told to report to the barrack and contact the lieutenant. Well, back then, a young trooper, Kenny, didn't even look at a barrack commander. You avoided looking at him, making eye contact with him, because you felt like they were going to slap your head off your shoulders. You didn't even look at him, you know. So I'm told at 10:25 the barrack will report in person. Well, the first thing I did is I went to a payphone. I didn't even have 10 cents back then to make a call to the barrack. Instead, I called the barrack on my radio, and I asked them to call the payphone, and they did. I said, "Can I talk to my sergeant?" And he got on the phone, and he said, "What do you want, boy?" And I said, "Sir, I don't know if you're aware, but I've been told to respond to the barrack and meet with the barrack commander. Do you have any idea what that's about?" He said, "I have no idea, but I am aware of it." He said, "But when you get here, get up with me first, and I'll go in there with you." So that's exactly, and honestly, I was terrified. I had no idea why this brand new barrack commander, who I did not know, by the way, I didn't know him. I had no idea why he was wanting me to respond to the barrack. So I got to the barrack and I walked to his office door. I knocked on the outside of the door. I saluted, requested permission to enter. I go in, and he gets up from around his desk to shake my hand, and he said, "Have a seat." And he looked at me, he said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "In the last 3 weeks in preparation of my arrival here at the barrack as a new commander, I've been going through all the different cases to see what kind of productivity is going on here at this barrack with these troopers." He said, "I want to tell you something." His words to me were, "You are the hottest thing since sliced bread." He said, "I love your traffic stops. I like your work ethic. I like all your consent searches you're doing." He said, "Most importantly, a man that can handle all the calls you're handling for service and still amass the number of criminal arrests and DUI arrests." He said, I got plans for you." I said, "Well, thank you, sir." He said, "No." He looked at me, he goes, "I've got plans for you." He goes, "Effective immediately, you no longer handle calls for service. effective immediately. I want you to go out there and continue to do exactly what you're doing. He said, I just don't want any influence in your work activity by calls for service. So I'll take care of that. You no longer handle calls for service. He looked at me, he goes, and you answer to me. You don't have a corporal. You don't have a sergeant. You don't have a first sergeant. You answer to me. Just go out there and do what you do best. I said, yes, sir. So the next day I went out on US Route 13 in Pocomoke City, Maryland, on the Virginia line, on the Accomack County, Virginia line. I was about 4 miles north of the Virginia line, but I was working in an area where US Route 13 and US Route 113 came together. I was just south of those two roads. Both of those are large north-south routes bringing traffic from New York City down to the Hampton Roads area of Virginia. Hampton Roads being Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Newport News, and Hampton, and Suffolk. My very first day out there, the very next day, I would stop a car and seize the largest amount of crack cocaine and heroin ever made in that county's history. And keep in mind, Kenny, that was only 28 grams of heroin and 73 grams of crack. But those were the two largest seizures of those two substances ever made in that county's history. When I got to the barrack commander made it very clear to me, you go ahead and start your paperwork. I'm going to be calling the press. We're going to hold a press conference here at the barrack. For 28 grams of heroin and 73 grams of crack, we held a press conference. And I remember displaying the bags of dope on a table. And by the way, they were not individually packaged bags. It was 1 ounce of heroin in one baggie and 73 grams of crack in another baggie. They weren't even broken down for distribution. That would be done later when they got to their destination. But we held this press conference, and the next day I did paperwork all day. And then I went back out there the following day and made the largest marijuana seizure ever made in that county's history. And back to the barrack I go, another press conference. I do paperwork the next day, and I had court that afternoon. It's amazing how you can remember these things because you never forget where you came from, Kenny. And I mean that. That's so important. That's why I don't mind sharing the story. And I often share it with my students in class because I want them to know that Mike Lewis was like you all. I did exactly what you did every day, but this is what got me recognized, and this is what gave me the opportunity to succeed. That barrack commander took a chance on me. And after doing the paperwork on that marijuana seizure, I go back out there on a Wednesday. And I had a trooper from another county who crossed the county line. He came down there to talk to me. He looked at me, he goes, Mike, how are you doing this, man? You are freaking killing it. And his name was Ernie Leatherberry. His father was the first African-American trooper who became the first high-ranking bureau chief in the history of the Maryland State Police. His name was Ernest J. Leatherberry. He ultimately died in office, and incredible guy. So I said, Ernie, I said, I'm going to tell you something, man. If you watch the body language of those people driving past us and watch the reaction, just pay close attention. I said, they're always going to be traveling by themselves, seemingly, or one other person in a car. I'm not worried about looking for guys that are 3 or 4 people deep in a car. They're users. They're addicts. Look for the person traveling alone or one other person. And about that time, a New York rental went by. The headlights were still on. And back then, the headlights had to be manually turned on. And for the headlights to be on during daylight hours that morning, they had to have been traveling during the hours of darkness and had not turned their headlights off yet. So I told Ernie, I said, they've been on the road all night. I could see the driver was laid back. He was locked onto the steering wheel, laid back. The passenger was laid all the way back sleeping with no seatbelt on. That's a primary violation in Maryland. I said, I believe they've been on the road all night long. There's a good seatbelt violation. You go stop it. Ernie went after it. And troopers could stop in any county. We had authority to stop anywhere. So Ernie stops the car and he calls me to back him up on a stop. And I get on the scene to back him up, and he looked at me. He said, Mike, these guys are jacked up. They're scared to death. I said, okay. He said, why don't you talk to them and let me know what you think? So I went and talked to him. I said, it's definitely here. And he goes, you get consent to search? He said, I'm not comfortable doing that yet because Ernie wasn't on the job all that long. So I got consent to search the car, and in the spare tire, inside the spare tire, in the trunk of a rental car, we found 8.5 pounds of cocaine. It was 5 pounds of powder and 3.5 pounds of crack, all crack. So back to the Berlin barrack, we both go. The commander from the Princess Anne barrack goes to Berlin to meet with my commander, and we hold this joint press conference. And to be honest with you, that's how I got started. From that day forward, every time I was out there, I was hitting multi-kilos. And then I started hitting false compartments. And it was when I started hitting false compartments it got the attention of the El Paso Intelligence Center down in Texas, because I'd never heard of Epic. I never used Epic. But they called me up and said, hey, Trooper, we want to talk to you about these hidden compartments you keep posting. We're getting all this information. Back then, Kenny, every Friday afternoon, an Epic report came out via teletype, and they highlighted all the significant seizures that occurred across the country. So I knew who was hitting in Idaho. I knew who was hitting in Indiana. I knew who was hitting in Virginia, just south of me. I knew who was hitting down in Georgia, and I could see the seizures. In order to meet that criteria, you had to seize $100,000 in cash or more just to meet the threshold to be on that list. You also had to seize 28 grams or greater of heroin to be on that list. You had to seize 448 grams or greater of cocaine to be on that list. So now Mike Lewis's name is on that list every week. So I got a call one day from a guy I did not know. His name was Robbie Bishop. He was working down in Georgia, and he was seeing all these hidden compartments I was hitting. And Robbie told me he was making some sizable seizures. He said, but man, these traps you're posting, he said, I've never seen anything like it. And back then, Epic was producing a real thick, colored catalog of the most commonly encountered concealment methods being seized by cops across the nation. It was a massive catalog they were sending literally out to everybody for free. Wow. And God knows how, because it was a colored catalog with a detailed summary of every trap being found. Well, then in June of 1984, I got a call from Epic saying, hey, I want you to know that you are on trajectory right now to seize more crack cocaine than any other cop in the nation. I said, you're kidding me. He said, oh, no, right now you are neck and neck with the New Jersey State Police. You guys are seizing by far more crack than any other law enforcement agency in the nation. Crack actually came out in March of 1986. But believe it or not, it was March of 1988 when crack first came out. And it was pretty much confined to the Haitian communities, then the Jamaican communities. But it really poisoned our inner cities. Those are the ones that were being adversely affected more than anyone else. So I had my marching orders: go after the dope because we're losing lives in the cities. Go after the dope, see if you can seize it out on the highway. So we were really going after every load we could get, but certainly hoping it was going to be crack and powder cocaine, because unfortunately, there was a disproportionate number of African Americans dying from it than anyone else. And we were trying to save lives, and it was happening in the cities. So in November of 1994, I was told that the Maryland State Police clearly led the nation in crack cocaine seizures, followed by the New Jersey State Police. And by then, I had already developed relationships with New Jersey troopers, not through social media. That was non-existent back then. But by simply picking up the telephone and calling guys. When I saw New Jersey State Police stop this car, stop that, I would call up, I'd find out who the trooper was, and then I established relationships with a guy named Johnny Cratcher, New Jersey State Police, Brian Caffrey, New Jersey State Police, Rick Osetnik, New Jersey State Police, Rich Roselle, New Jersey State Police. There were guys that were hammers that were killing it up on the Jersey Turnpike, also known as the Black Dragon. Called the Black Dragon because it's a black, windy asphalt road, i.e. the Jersey Turnpike. And it's where it was the hottest place anywhere else in New Jersey was on that black asphalt. So,
was that coming out of New York then?
What's that?
Was there dope coming out of New York going through that area? Is that what it was?
Every load coming out of New York coming south hit the New Jersey Turnpike. Absolutely. It was on the Jersey Turnpike. And by far the quickest way to get out of New York City was via the Jersey Turnpike to head south. And then you would cross the Delaware Memorial Bridge, and then you had a choice to stay straight on I-95 or go south on Route 13 in Wilmington, Delaware. And with Route 13 would take you down to Route 113 in Dover, Delaware. But we were seizing all this dope, the nation's largest seizures, on Route 13. And then in February of 1995, I got a call from the FBI and DEA down in Quantico, Virginia, asking me if I would consider teaching their in-service training and entry level on hidden compartments to their federal agents. They said, you're seizing by far more dope in hidden compartments than we seize with the DEA. We don't get the compartments like you get, and we know we're missing it. So I started teaching and training and went through a 2-week, back then, it was a 2-week school to become a certified instructor. And then I started getting picked up by NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, to be a primary instructor for them in highway safety with emphasis on criminal enforcement. And then in the late 90s, 98, 99, the Maryland State Police started getting sued for racial profiling allegations, like many other agencies did across the country. And these racial profiling allegations shut law enforcement agencies down, completely disbanded them because law enforcement's leaders, executive management did not want to have to deal with the allegations. So what did they took the path of least resistance, simply disband the teams, and they disbanded our teams. Well, I told the troopers that I worked with, I said, let me tell you something. They cannot tell you that you can't do your job. They cannot tell you can't do your job. Go out there and continue doing exactly what you're doing. You're just not going to be able to do it in a team concept. Call for backup when you need it. And that's what we continue doing. Meanwhile, NHTSA reached out to me and said, listen, man, with all your knowledge in traffic stops and making criminal arrests, would you consider working with us to create a standardized course of curriculum for conducting the complete traffic stop, very similar to what's known as standardized field sobriety testing to determine one's level of sobriety. Now we're going to have a standardized course of curriculum for determining whether someone's involved in criminal activity. So I work with Dr. Jim Onder with NHTSA. We came up with a very, very comprehensive standardized course of curriculum that was ultimately reviewed and approved by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, by the American Civil Liberties Union, by the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and then down in Lafourche, Louisiana, we rolled this new course of curriculum out. And then I was one of 4 master instructors in the nation to start teaching this course. And I traveled the nation teaching this course because truly, there's a hell of a lot more that we do as interdiction cops than just interdicting dope. We interdict homicide suspects. Yep. We interdict kidnappers, as you well know. We interdict all kinds of stolen cars, guns, untaxed cigarettes, wanted fugitives, escaped prisoners. You know, seizing dope and seizing dope money is just one thing that we do. You know, there are many other things that we do as interdiction-minded cops. Cops that do nothing more than use their God-given powers of observation to identify any and all criminal activity during our stops. That's what we do. So we had a brand new state police superintendent. Kate, you want to break for a minute?
No. I was going to follow up with that federal law enforcement. Is that similar to the DIET program at all, or is that like
DIET program was very similar, but DIET focused heavily on commercial interdiction.
Okay.
So that's what they focused on. And they worked very carefully with Federal Motor Carrier Administration.
Okay.
So DIET was always synonymous with that, not with any other standardized program of working interdiction. They certainly were not part of mine, but I will tell you, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration falls beneath NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So they were very much not standoff, but had very little to do with our course of curriculum.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, because the overwhelming majority of cops focused on passenger car traffic enforcement as opposed to commercial traffic enforcement.
You're right.
See, those operating with CDLs are generally much better drivers than everybody else because they rely on that license. That's their livelihood. So we didn't have near as many problems back then with trucks as we do today, based on NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. So in 2003, we got a brand new state police superintendent by the name of Ed Norris. He came down from NYPD. He became the Baltimore City Police Commissioner under then Mayor Martin O'Malley. Mayor Martin O'Malley ended up becoming governor, but he was the mayor at the time. But Ed Norris ended up leaving there as commissioner because we elected a brand new Republican governor by the name of Bob Ehrlich. And Governor Bob Ehrlich, who remains a very dear friend of mine, he selected Ed Norris to lead the Maryland State Police. Well, Ed Norris came in like a wrecking ball. And right away, he announced that, and I printed this out for show. He announced this is a Maryland State Police Trooper newsletter. And if you look at this Trooper newsletter, it is dated May and June of 2003. And right here is the superintendent's message. And he announced the creation of a brand new interstate criminal enforcement team being led by me. And I was brought in and told to select who I wanted to be on the team. And I was told, don't worry about diversity. We want workers on the team. We want those who are proven, hardcore, working troopers who can get the job done. And I was told, don't worry about diversity. And we went out there and started one hell of an interdiction team. And it was diverse because I had some great guys from which to choose. And I was also told, let me know if you need Mustangs, Camaros, whatever you need to get the job done. So we were put back out there, and within weeks after this new team was created, we stopped a Dodge Intrepid northbound on Interstate 95 in Cecil County, Maryland. And based on indicators present during a traffic stop, we sought permission to search the car. And when we popped the trunk, there were 2 dead bodies in the trunk. Both were victims of multiple gunshot wounds to the face, the upper torso. They were wrapped in plastic. They were then wrapped in comforters that were removed from a hotel room beds, and they were shoved in the trunk of the car. We obviously secured the scene, wrote a warrant for the vehicle, and we removed the bodies from the rear of the car. It was a false compartment built behind the back seat. We would get over $100,000 in cash, $105,000 to be exact, out of that vehicle. And I had incredible guys like Mike Connor that were, natural leaders. You know what I mean? And when they first had that stop, I wasn't on that stop, by the way. I was in the classroom teaching. Mike Connor called me up and he said, Sarge, I need your help. This is what we got. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. I was in East Lansing, Michigan, teaching a class, interdiction class, when Connor called me on that stop. So under Mike Connor's leadership, that team grew. And I was the sergeant on the team. Mike was a TFC, got promoted to corporal. And that wasn't the first time, by the way, a car had been stopped in Maryland and bodies were found in the trunk. My God, that's happened many times in Maryland alone, Kenny. In one case, a vehicle was stopped with temporary tags on it. A woman acting very suspiciously ends up running from the scene. She's apprehended. We popped the trunk, and the bodies of her 2 daughters are in the trunk of the car. Both were badly decomposed, but she had the bodies of both her children in the car. So, law enforcement executive leadership knew the importance of criminal interdiction teams and why we should allow these men and women to focus on what's important as opposed to writing tickets. And I love that job like no other. I love being a sergeant on that team. And I say this to all my students. For the last 11 years of my career as a trooper, I chose not to participate in a promotional process. I chose not to take the promotional exam because I love being a sergeant, running, supervising, and managing a team of like-minded interdiction troopers that went out there every day and made it happen. Did we have our share of near-death experiences? All the time. Did we ultimately have to shoot and kill? Absolutely we did. And we lost good troopers on interdiction stops here in Maryland that were shot and killed. And before I would leave US Route 13 and go up the road on October 17th, 1995, while I was assigned full-time working interdiction here on Route 13, Trooper First Class Edward Allen Plank, who was with me in the first hidden compartment case I ever got. He was my backup. Eddie was shot and killed at 1:09 a.m. in the morning. He was shot and killed on the evening of the Million Man March in Washington, D.C. And he was shot and killed by 2 wannabe Jamaicans. One had long dreadlocks. Eddie was shot in the face with a .45 caliber handgun as he stood on the driver's side of an automobile right out here on Route 13. The bullet would strike him right to the left of the bridge of the nose and blow out the back of his head. He would die before his body ever hit the asphalt. 13 weeks later, I would shoot and kill a guy on the same stretch of highway Eddie's guy was a North Carolina drug trafficker. The guy I shot and killed was a North Carolina drug trafficker. So a lot of dope was being moved to and from New York to North Carolina. The Outer Banks, believe it or not, Kenny, Manio, Kill Devil Hills, Raleigh, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. And so we had a lot of tragedy with our troopers being killed on interdiction stops. And then in 2006, interdiction's running full blast. The Maryland State Police interdiction team, ICE team, is killing it. The incumbent sheriff here in Wycomico County announced he was not going to be seeking re-election. And I had no desire to run for political office. I had no desire to run for sheriff at all. And but that day, that very day, my cell phones, both of them, started ringing off the hook. People asked me to run for sheriff. And quite frankly, it's nothing I had ever considered. It's nothing I never thought about. And it's certainly nothing that I had any desire to do. However, I started receiving a lot of political pressure. One elected senator, 2 elected state delegates were calling me a trooper, saying, we need you. We need you to save Wycomico County from the drug trafficking and from the gang activity taking place. And you're the only one with experience that can do this job. And I thought about it. And I said, I'll get back with you. Before I could get back with them, several of the deputies from the sheriff's office right here started calling me, asking me to run. And you know as well as I know, city cops generally don't like the county cops or the sheriff's deputies. Sheriff's deputies don't like the troopers. You always got this, they don't like the troopers. The troopers don't like anybody. We've all seen that. So the biggest problem we face is all this organized crime against disorganized law enforcement. Law enforcement agencies don't want to work together and collaborate for one common cause, and that's get the criminals off the street. So when the deputies started calling me, asking me to run, I thought, this is a good sign. Maybe I better consider it. And my wife and I went away for a religious retreat called A Weekend to Remember. And we prayed about it. We talked about it. We prayed about it. And on the way home, we both looked at one another and said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do it. This county needs new leadership right now. And I just can't let it fall into the hands of anyone. Meanwhile, multiple people had already filed for sheriff in the county, 6 other people. And I knew those candidates. And there were certainly a couple of them that were highly qualified. There were some, and there were more of them that I thought, there's no way I can let them be sheriff in this county. They don't have the requisite experience to be a good leader, number one. Number two, they have 0 experience in drug enforcement. They have 0 experience in interdiction enforcement. They probably don't remember the last time they stopped a car. And so my wife and I went onto my county courthouse and I filed for sheriff. And so I was running against 6 other people. I won my primary. I won my general election with 63% of the vote. 4 years later, in 2010, I ran unopposed. 4 more years later, in 2014, I ran unopposed. 4 years later, in 2018, I ran unopposed. 4 years later, in 2022, I ran unopposed. And I'm currently serving my 5th 4-year term. I would like to think it's a good report card that no one's opposed me. But I announced when I got elected 5th term, this will be my 5th and final term. But quite honestly, I have just moved into a brand new $40 million sheriff's office. This is not a jail. This isn't a sheriff's office. This is patrol and investigation. And I've got to look out for a lot of people that have been not only loyal to me, that have helped me build this new sheriff's office. And they're not eligible to retire yet, number one. Number two, I still love I mean this. I still love doing this job today as much as I ever have. I'm 60 years old. I still got a lot of life left in me. I have no desire to retire right now. And I've made it very clear I intend to run again. But meanwhile, another guy hearing that I wasn't going to run announced he's going to run. He still says he's going to run. And you know what? I want him to run. I want him to run because I've never faced opposition, and there's nothing I like any more than a good fight. So bring it on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, Kenny, if he really is doing it for the right reasons and he thinks that he can make meaningful change here in the office and in the county, then do it. Why wouldn't you? That's the beauty of democracy. It's the beauty of our elections. Please, I encourage him to run.
Is he a cop?
But I will tell you this. I have built incredible relationships in this county. I've got a lot of support in this county. And life's good right now.
I think you have a lot of support across the nation.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Is the guy that said he's going to run, is he a cop currently, or is he?
He is a cop in a neighboring jurisdiction.
Okay.
He was a former deputy in this county who then resigned to open up a landscaping business. He said in a recent podcast that trying to manage 13 people in his landscaping company was too much of a challenge for him. And it became too much of a headache. So he got out of the landscaping business, went back into law enforcement. Keep in mind, we have 139 employees in this office. So if you can't manage 13, I don't know how he's going to manage 139. But, and believe me, there are significant challenges in law enforcement every day in this county. We stay very busy, and we truly do. But I welcome him to run. I welcome him to run.
That's awesome. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So when you were playing team sports, how do you think that translated to you being a cop? Do you think that had some correlations?
Well, there's nothing gets done without teamwork. This office is all teamwork. It's not Mike Lewis. I've got a chief deputy that not only runs this office in my absence, but he runs it in my presence. He wants me to be able to focus on what I need to focus on while he focuses on operations here in this office. He's an incredible man. And and by the way, he's been my chief deputy since day one. For 18 years, he's been my chief deputy, 18.5 years to be exact. And if I had to make that appointment again today, it would be him again. There's no finer chief deputy than Gary Baker. He does an exceptional job. So it's all about teamwork, as you well know. And wrestling and football, we're all trying to achieve the same goal, and that's to get across the finish line, right? And that's to get across that finish line victoriously. And I had setbacks in sports. I had 2 separate hernia operations, one in 79, one in 81. That was those were my high school years. So I had 2 setbacks, but you don't let those setbacks define you. It's how you get up and re-engage, as you well know. I don't have to tell you that, but it makes all the difference in the world. And teamwork is everything, man. And you got to get everyone's buy-in. You can have a team, but are they buying in with what you're doing? Are they buying in with what our goal is here?
Yeah,
it matters.
I feel like sports also give you that dependability on other people too. In order for something to succeed, you have to look to the guy to your left and right, or guy or girl to your left and right, in order to make the whole thing work smoothly together. And I don't know, I've done many of these, and a lot of the team sport aspect comes into play either high school or college, and then transition to law enforcement. It's very similar responses about depending on people, and and the team atmosphere both translate well.
Kenny, I mentioned a while ago, I'm 60 years old. I'm also expecting my first grandchild. She's due on July the 4th. So my wife tells me all the time, I've got every reason in the world to retire. She said, life's been good to you. You've had 41 years of law enforcement. Now it's time to go. But I know my wife well enough to know if it's what I want to do, and that is running a 6th term, she'll support me 100%. My wife has always been my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter. She's been with me for 43 years. We started dating in high school. We have 2 beautiful children. I have a 34-year-old son. I have a 29-year-old daughter. And my daughter is a school teacher down in Leesburg. My son was a director of operations for a food corporation, decided to open his own business. He bought 46 acres of land here in the county and now runs his own business. But life is good.
That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations on your first grandkid.
Thank you, brother.
And then the supportive wife is huge. Like if you don't have, for me anyways, like if you don't have someone to come home to that you can rely on in those we all have bad days, but as a cop, they can be really bad. So I feel like if you don't have someone that you can lean on that, trusts in you and encourages you to keep doing the job, and also that, you can be vulnerable in front of it, it goes a long way. And, you always have that rock no matter what. I think a spouse to any first responder is huge.
100%.
And then you talked about Robbie Bishop. Ironically, I found out about those epic reports from Shannon Shelf, and he had a case that led down to Robbie Bishop, and he told me a very similar story about they stopped the same truck, and someone in Kentucky got a load of money or something. I don't know, but it's interesting that name keeps continuously coming up, Robbie Bishop. And
it's funny you would bring up Kentucky, because that's where I first formally met Robbie. We had talked on the phone about an upcoming conference, and it was down in Kentucky. And we both went down there, and we actually taught at the same conference. And so I got to spend some great time with Robbie Bishop. And I got to tell you something, man. The guy was a rock star, incredible guy. Loved him dearly. And I tell people all the time, I remember where I was, exactly what I was doing on January 20th, 1999, when Robbie was gunned down on the side of I-20 in Villa Rica, Carroll County, Georgia. And he was gunned down at 11:25 a.m. in the morning. And Kevin McGee out of Schenectady, New York, was the killer. And, it's one of those things you'll never forget. And of course, I took a bunch of Maryland troopers we flew down for Robbie's funeral. And I stayed at the Villa Rica, Georgia State Patrol Post. The GSP assigned a trooper to me the whole time I was there. And I had taken down all kinds of swag, state police swag for Robbie's two children, Cody and Lauren. And got to spend some time with his children and his wife, Lisa. And I tell you, man, those are memories that are never leave you as long as you live. And Robbie embodied interdiction. He embodied what we embody today. And I don't have to tell our listeners about your success. You've killed it, brother, and you continue to make us all proud in what you do, Kenny. So keep doing what you're doing, man. Love to see guys like you, smart, bright as hell, not only able to juggle multiple things, but to continue to lead the way for this new generation of interdiction cops. And the way you're teaching, the way you're training, the way you're editing your videotapes, you make it seem so easy. But when you explain it to these guys, it is easy. Once you learn how to do it, I don't have to tell you, it's easy to recognize those engaged in criminal activity traveling through your area. Once you learn it, it's like, wow, that's what I've been missing all this time. And it's fun and it's competitive. And I will never apologize for putting bad guys in jail, because no one has a constitutional right to bring drugs into or through our counties undetected, unmolested, or unabated. No one has that right. And I tell defense attorneys who are friends of mine, I believe in our Fourth Amendment right to unlawful searches and seizures, but no one has a constitutional right to escape detection. No one does.
Yeah, I like that. And you said a lot of nice things about me. I don't know. I just want to leave this profession better than I found it in any way.
You're doing it, my friend, and you're doing it.
Robbie Bishop, I told Shannon the same thing. Like, he was just before his time. Like, could you imagine him right now with social media? He would have been. I mean, that guy. I mean, he was doing it on VHS tapes. Like, I don't even know how he was managing to make those things, and that's amazing to me.
Honestly, Kenny, I will send you a Robbie Bishop Living Life on the Edge VHS tape, because I mass produced them. I truly did for Robbie back in the day. But his good friend and chief, and I call him this all the time, his chief editor was Justin Webb. Justin Webb is the one who harnessed the power back then of the VHS, and he started blending the music with the videotapes, and it was Justin Webb who started producing these tapes. Well, I was getting requests because I was showing Robbie's tapes. I was giving homage to Robbie, what he's done for our country. Robbie was still alive when I started doing that. And then, of course, Robbie passed away and was brutally murdered. But I continue to make copies of those tapes. I didn't sell them. I gave them away. But I had a friend of mine in this area that would make those tapes for me, VHS. And I would travel. I had to travel with all these VHS tapes, getting on and off airplanes back then. Didn't have any media device, didn't have a digital device. It was all VHS tapes. And it was unbelievable, man. But yes, he did. Robbie's the one started that, by the way. No one else in the country was producing training tapes like Robbie was. He started that.
Yeah.
He gave me the idea to do it.
Man before his time, that's for sure, man. I mean,
Robbie was on the cutting edge.
Yeah. I wish I had the ability to talk to him. He was just before my time. It's one that I don't know, that I always regret that I don't have the opportunity to speak to. When it comes to, you talked about 1990 or 2001 and 2003. Didn't Maryland stop someone in 2001 that was involved in the? Wasn't that part of your interdiction, guys?
It's funny you would say that. I share that with my classes too. It truly does. It underscores why we do everything we do. All 19 terrorists that attacked our country on September 11, 2001, all 19 without exception, drove to the crime scene in rented automobiles. And one of those 19 terrorists was stopped on Interstate 95 in Cecil County, Maryland, for traveling 90 miles an hour in a posted 65-mile-per-hour zone. One of the troopers on my team, Trooper First Class Joe Catalano, stopped a Virginia-registered Mitsubishi Eclipse for traveling 90 miles an hour in a posted 65-mile-per-hour zone. The guy was traveling alone. He would issue him a citation for $270. He was allowed to sign a ticket. He was allowed to go. Hours later, that man would board United Flight 93, and we would learn on September the 18th, 1 week to the day after our country was attacked, the FBI rolled into Maryland State Police headquarters in Pikesville. I was summoned by the superintendent's staff to get down there right away, and we found out that the man we had stopped that day was none other than Ziad Jira, the pilot of United Flight 93, when it crashed in the mountains of Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killed all 44 men, women, and children on board. We had him stopped en route to the crime scene, and we let him go. And they found Joe's citation inside the rental car. And they wanted to know from us, did you see anything? Did you notice anything? Was anybody else with him? And the truth of the matter is, even if we had searched that car that day and we had found flight manuals and box cutters, which were in there, they would have meant nothing to anyone prior to September 11th. Would have meant nothing to anyone. But we were under the microscope back then for racial profiling allegations. So if it was a person of color, if it was and I do mean this, if it was a person of ethnicity, we were very cognizant that we were being looked at, we were being watched, and we handled those traffic stops differently. We truly did. It's pathetic that we had to, but we did.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to push any shade towards whoever stopped him or anything. I mean, like you just explained, there was nothing, even if he was suspicious and went through a full interdiction stop and talked to him the entire, all that, like that would have meant nothing to him until, 2 days later or whatever.
Yeah.
It's crazy though, the amount of stuff that you remember to the date and time. I don't know if I'll be able to do that when I'm 60 plus.
Kenny, it blows everybody's minds, and people say that to me all the time. They say it blows my mind. I can remember so many things. I've only touched on it briefly, quite frankly. I do want to say this, and I tell people all the time, I ask people all the time, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be when you leave law enforcement? Do you want to be remembered as a mediocre cop who went out there and did mediocre work and served 20 or 25 years in law enforcement, snatched your retirement and left to do something else? Or what kind of legacy do you really want to leave behind? Because we lost nearly 3,000 people on September the 11th, nearly 3,000 people on September the 11th. And I tell people all the time, when you leave this classroom here today, you have a choice to go back and raise what you do to the next level and truly look at every traffic stop differently, or you can put all this information you have gleaned from my presentation here today and put it on a shelf, whether it's a mental shelf or a physical shelf with the training manuals I provided for you, and say, that was some good training, but I'll never see that coming through my area. You're wrong. They're wrong, as you well know. And I use examples of municipality cops across this country, like yourself. Not sheriff's deputies, not state troopers, but those who work in municipalities and work in townships that have recognized, kilos of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine aren't being dropped into our community by parachute. They're being driven in every day. It's being driven in every day. Them being broken out, it's being driven out every day. So you got to seize a tremendous investigative advantage of a traffic stop. It's knowing what you can and cannot do under the Fourth Amendment. I tell people, you've really got, there's so much out there. It's for every cop to see. What do you want to be remembered for? Because that U.S. flag, it's over my shoulder right now. I tell people all the time, the red stripes in that flag represent hardiness and valor. Those white stripes represent purity and innocence. And the blue, perseverance, vigilance, and justice for all. That's what America's all about. Go out there and seize this opportunity that American cops should go out there every day and truly strive for excellence. Don't accept mediocrity as part of your repertoire. Go out there and seize this opportunity, because wearing a badge, wearing a gun belt gives you full authority to police your community. And that's what your citizens expect you to do. They expect you to use your training, your knowledge, but people like you, they expect us to use our special skill set to look for any and all signs of criminal activity while on patrol. And I'm not going to waste or squander this opportunity. Go out there and make it happen.
You motivated me. I want to go back to work. I just got off.
Yeah. But it's true.
No, yeah, I completely agree. But the way you word it is just so motivating. Like it is like someone else could deliver it. It's not going to have the same delivery, but the way you speak and your conviction is because you're passionate about it. You mean it, and comes off that way, and it's very, very motivating. I know that you're a busy man, so I don't want to keep it too long.
I'm yours tonight, buddy. I mean that. I'm
all right,
yours.
sweet.
Well, go as long as you need to go.
All right. Well, I could talk to you all day, so don't say that stuff. We'll be here all night. But you talked early on that you just got into interdiction. Was there anything that motivated you to do that, or anyone that led you that way, or did you just start developing this on your own?
I was 100% self-motivated. I truly did not have any mentors early on. Even my field training trooper, when I was working night shift with him, he wanted to sleep on night shift. My sergeant, this is what he said to me. I was still under the direction of a field training trooper or an FTO, and I was knocking the drunks out. And I'll never forget walking in one night, and the sergeant grabbed my field training trooper. He said, "You take that prisoner in that room," which was the intoxilizer room. Okay. He grabbed me. He said, he pulled me in another room. He looked at me. He said, "I want to tell you something, son." His exact words: "We ain't no fucking 7-Eleven. This barrack does not stay open 24 hours a day. Find somewhere to go get some sleep." Never forget that. So when I tell you I didn't have the best mentors or leadership, people want to grab, but I made my mind up. They couldn't stop me from doing my job, Kenny.
Yeah.
And if I was locking people up for drunks, he was going to run my intoxilizer. He was going to run that intoximeter. He was going to run that breathalyzer because he had no choice, because I was going to still do my job. I truly believe that drunks had wreaked havoc in our northern part of our county. I saw the wrecks. As a trooper, I investigated wrecks all the time that had taken the lives of precious people. And I thought, you know what? They're not going to come through my county drunk, leave these clubs drunk. I'm going to be out here doing my job. And I love staying up all night long. I loved it, man. Never drank a cup of coffee in my life. My high, I drank were Pepsi Colas going out there and doing my job. Pepsi was what I drank all the time. And it kept me up all night long. And man, I was stopping everything moving. And back then I carried a .357 Smith & Wesson Model 19 revolver with a swivel holster on my side. And I loved it. And I got out of my vehicle, Kenny, more nights than one. And as I walked up to the car, you always grab your gun belt and you make sure it's where it needs to be. And my gun was gone. When I sat in my car, I had to swivel, like right now, I've got this holster on, but I had to swivel that holster and lay the gun next to me on the seat, and the gun would slide out the back floor.
Oh, man.
When you accelerated, the gun would slide out of your holster in the back floor, but you wouldn't feel it because you were seat belted in. And you wouldn't hear it because of the acceleration. Crazy. So
Yeah.
When I tell you, man, and hidden compartments, by the way, the first hidden compartment I ever got, Eddie Plank was with me. I mentioned that a while ago. I knew something wasn't right in this car, but I couldn't figure it out. I really couldn't. And then when I pulled the carpet down, and I had never heard of hidden compartments. I never heard of aftermarket installed compartments. This was in 1992. They were, if they were around, there was certainly no training being afforded to interdiction cops, no training being afforded to any other law enforcement agency in the area of compartments. And when I found my first compartment, it was in a 1987 Cadillac in 1992. It was behind, there were two traps in the car, by the way. But the first one I found was behind the back seat. And Eddie Plant was backing me up. He was watching the two guys. And I could tell by their body language and demeanor I was on to something. And when I said to the guy, I said, "Hey, man, what's behind the back seat of your car?" I said, "I pulled the car back and it's a shiny wall back there." And it was registered to the guy on the back seat who was sound asleep at 3:10 p.m. in the afternoon. He was sound asleep on the rear seat of this car when I stopped him. He looked at me and goes, "Man, I don't know what's behind the back seat of that car. I know it's registered to me and all, but a lot of people use my car." I knew that it had to be something. So I got a crowbar out of my vehicle back then, and I started ripping into this hidden compartment and literally broke a hole through there with that straight edge on that crowbar, and I could see plastic wrap packages. We took the vehicle to the nearby state police barrack, and I used a drill to actually widen that hole that I'd put in, used a big drill bit, stuck a sawzall blade, and cut it out. And there was 22 pounds of cocaine behind the back seat of that car. 22 pounds of coke, a semi-automatic handgun, and a buddy of mine heard me when I called it out, who had been working interdiction with me in another county. He came to help me search the car, and he found the second compartment of the dashboard that opened up on electronically on cables. So both of them opened up. We figured where the wires were, got them both working. And that second compartment was in the dashboard with a loaded 9mm handgun. So yeah, that was the first time I ever got a false compartment. And by 1994, I had perfected finding them to the point that I was asked to do strictly hidden compartment training for agencies all over the country. So yeah, I got very busy doing that.
That's amazing. And the state police afforded you those opportunities to go teach?
They certainly did. But in 1996, Kenny, 2 years later, I made sergeant and was assigned to the Annapolis barrack because I had a death threat on my life. So they transferred me 94 miles away and put me set the desk, took me out of interdiction, put me on a desk in Annapolis, Maryland, which is our state capital, right outside the Naval Academy. I was inside of the Naval Academy. Every day I had to set the desk, and it broke my heart, man, because it was like, it's like putting a starving tiger in a cage. And I want to get out and work. But they had to work the investigation because we had death threats. I had a death threat on me. And later on that year, another troop had a death threat, and they shot him at his house, in his yard.
Was that brothers?
They were the two brothers. Yep, David and Michael Hughes. Mike was the intended target, a rock star interdiction guy. His brother David was an interdiction guy, but wasn't the rock star Michael was. But they both lived in the same house with mom and dad, the dad being a retired state trooper who would later become the U.S. Marshal for the state of Maryland. His name is Johnny Hughes. But that was one hell of a case, but they shot him. And so they were fearful I was going to get killed. So they take me off the road, broke my heart. When I got to Annapolis, I thought, you know what, if I can't be working the road, then I'm going to start accepting more requests to teach and train. Then the barrack commander came to me and said, hey, man, we think it's great representation. You represent the state police all over the country. But if you want to continue doing this shit, do it on your own time. Don't do it on our time. Do it on your leave days, when your days off. So what I did is I put in a request for secondary employment because he said to me, I said, sir, I can't do that without a request for secondary employment. He goes, put it in, I'll sign off on it, endorse it, and send it up the road. That's when I first started getting compensated, if you will, Kenny, for teaching and training like we do today. And back then I was like, oh my God, I'm making some damn good money speaking and lecturing. I had no idea I could make this kind of money. And it paled in comparison to what I get today and what you get today, I don't have to tell you, I didn't get in this business to make money, but I was forced into teaching and training in a consultant capacity because the state police got tired of me being gone all the time. That's what happened. On their dime, by the way.
Yeah, that's what, I'm part of the diet program, and that's where I started teaching. And I know there's some things going on with it right now, but I don't want it to go away because I would at least travel once a year to teach for free. And they offered the advanced ride class where you get to go around the country and ride with other cops as an instructor. It was, I loved it. I am disheartened that they got rid of the advanced ride, and hopefully they keep the other portion around. But that's my way of giving back. That's where I started. And
absolutely,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it and the leadership of it, but it's on shaky ground to say the least, I guess.
Well, Kenny, I will tell you, I still speak and lecture a lot. But I made my mind up a long time ago. If I can't be out there on the street doing it every single day, I will train an army of men and women who can. And that's my goal. I'm going to give back. I want to train an army of men and women to do this job. It's the greatest job in the world. Once you've interdicted and you've been successful at it, nothing else ever compares to working interdiction. In terms of law enforcement, nothing will compare to it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it too. I don't have any aspirations in this profession to do anything else.
I'm with you.
Yeah. And very similar. Like if when I came up, man, there wasn't a lot of people that helped me. Like it was like, I had like 3 people maybe, but anytime I would ask certain people questions, it was like I was asking for like CIA secrets. And I was like, man, if I ever get lucky at this stuff, I'm definitely going to tell everyone my successes and failures because I don't know why we hoard knowledge. Like it doesn't make sense to me. And that's where it all started. Like it was literally like 2012 when I started working interdiction, and I was trying to like learn and ask people, and there's 3 people that were like, yeah, come on, like whatever you, and there were some of the guys that were like, I'd pull in the median to have conversations and they would just drive off. I'm like, well, that's interesting. But yeah, so like it just, that's the main reason I do it. Like and then it was interesting to watch those same people that didn't want to spend the time to help you. But when you have success, they were the biggest fans, almost like cheering you on and stuff. But it was like, you had to, make your own way or figure it out yourself. And I just don't think that as cops, I don't know. Me personally, that's not the way that I want to have this profession going. Like if I have knowledge, I'll give it to whoever wants to hear it.
I had a sergeant, I was doing paperwork one day on, it was 7.2 kilograms of crack, all crack. And I had a sergeant and that was a lot of, but you know what, Kenny, crack was much more prevalent back then than it is today. Much more prevalent. And I had 7.2 keys of crack in a false compartment behind the back seat. And I had a sergeant walk back. I was back there typing, by the way. We had Smith Kroner typewriters back then. There were no computers. So he's standing over my shoulder. Great guy, great guy. He's got his hands on his hips. He said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "Yes, sir, Sarge." He said, "How are you doing this?" I said, "Sir, I'm simply asking people for permission to search your car." By the way, I didn't use a dog at all back then, Kenny. I didn't use a dog. I simply asked people for permission to search your car, and they gave it to me. And I said, "Sir, I'm just asking people for permission to search your car." He said, "You can't do that." I said, "What do you mean I can't do that, Sarge?" He said, "You cannot ask people for permission to search your car without probable cause."
Wow.
And my eyes lit up and I'm like, this guy has no clue truly what you can and cannot do. He's old school. And I looked at him, I said, "Sarge, if I had probable cause, I would never ask for the permission to search." And he goes, "Whatever." And he walked away. Great guy, but old school. Didn't know what you could and could not do in the Fourth Amendment arena and its application of traffic stops. He truly didn't know.
You and Shannon came up in the same era, and he told me the same thing that happened out to him in Kentucky. Same exact thing, like where you didn't search cars, you didn't ask because it was their home, and and I was like, wow, such a different concept back then.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, most people, probably most people now are well educated regarding their rights to say, "No, you're not searching my car."
Yep.
And we see it. That's why the dog is so very, very important. It's a huge extension, and probably one of the greatest tools on our tool belt is the deployment of a canine. And I teach it and preach it all the time. Use the dog. And I had 8 dogs here in the Wycomico County Sheriff's Office just a couple of years ago. But to be honest with you, they were being underutilized. And we found out that we could manage a canine program here within my office if we shrank it from 8 to 5. So we have 5 dogs. We have 5 dogs here at the office. I have some incredibly talented canine handlers, and they're kicking ass. They really are. And I admire the work that they do. So we have a robust canine program.
That's awesome. That's my second favorite. So like interdiction, I got a dog a few years after I started working in interdiction, just for, I guess, the ease of it instead of calling dogs and stuff. But so that's the second most rewarding thing you can watch. Watching the dog's progression from when you get it to like watching him, like, I don't know, that is like a little kid. And you see their learning ability, and as they go, it's like watching a little kid succeed. I don't know. It's really rewarding to watch that. It's very similar to having people that attend your class, and then all of a sudden they use something that you taught in class, and they share that success with you. It's super rewarding for me. So
you bet it is.
All right, we're going to end here. 2 final questions. What is your most memorable seizure? It could be funny. It could be the biggest seizure. Whatever it is, just the most memorable for you.
Honestly, I have several. that are very funny. I don't have to tell you, man, when you can work with a group of guys and girls that you can joke with, that you can have fun with, it makes the whole experience, it makes all your daily experiences that much better. And Mike Connor was a brand new Marine, just had come out of the academy. Brand new Marine, came out of the academy as a Maryland State Trooper. And he had requested permission to ride with me here in Salisbury. I was assigned to headquarters in Baltimore 2 hours away, but I had an office in Salisbury. I didn't have to go to headquarters every day. And I would work interdiction on Route 13. And Mike had requested permission to work with me. And we're out there on day 1. And we stopped at Ford Expedition southbound on Route 13, just south of Colburn Mill Road. And got permission to search it, had Virginia plates on it. And the guy was traveling by himself. And all the indicators are there. And searched it, didn't find a damn thing, found nothing. And I always like to shake the hands of the violator afterward and give them a warning for the violation. If that was my original intent, to give them a warning for the violation and thank them. And I did that. And he said, "Yeah, I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate you so much." He said, "Matter of fact, come here a minute." Because I started walking away. And so what do you mean, come here a minute? He got down on, he's a great big guy. He got down on his knees. He said, "Come over here. I want to suck your..." And he said that right in front of Mike Connor. And I've never had anybody say that to me. He got on his knees. He goes, "Come over here. I want to suck your..." And I said, "Dude, get out of here. Get out of here." And I turned around and walked back to the vehicle. where Mike and I are driving down the road. Mike's driving. I'm on the passenger side, and there's dead silence in the vehicle. Quite honestly, I still wasn't quite processing what this man had just said to me. And Mike Connor, being the Marine, he was just as offended, but he was scared to death to say anything to me. And finally, I looked at him and I said, "Can you believe what the?" And then we had a blast laughing our butts off about it. And then he made me a copy of the videotape. He made a copy of the videotape, which I've always had in my collection, but I don't show it. But it's something obviously that can happen to you. Obviously, some of the most memorable cases that we've had shortly after 9/11, right after 9/11, I got a call from the FBI to do a directed stop. And the call for the directed stop was for a Middle Eastern male that was moving large amounts of money. And I said, okay. And I told him, let me know when you need me. And months went on, months went on, months went on. And then on September 11, 2002, they called me to make a stop. 1 year later to the day, on September 11th, I got called to do a stop on a Middle Eastern male about an hour west of my county. And to see that on videotape, knowing that Joe Catalano had stopped this same guy, captured on videotape, that was the pilot of United Flight 93 when it crashed in the mountains of Shanksville, killing 44 men, women, and children on board. By the way, Kenny, I want our viewers and listeners to know that that trooper suffered greatly over that from PTSD, knowing that he had that man stopped and cut him loose, and 44 people lost their lives. I mean, 40 innocent people. 4 hijackers were on that flight, and but 40 innocent men, women, and children lost their lives that day. And it really has bothered Joe to this day to know that he had that guy stopped and cut him loose.
He couldn't have done anything.
Yeah,
There's
but
nothing
the
he could have
stop,
done.
he and I tell, believe me, we've had many conversations about this, but I didn't realize it bothered him until his wife reached out to us and said, "Hey, you don't know what I'm dealing with at home. He's struggling with this big time." So we got him the counseling and the treatment he needed. But what a great trooper he has always been. Joe is a solid guy. By the way, he's one of our canine handlers. He had a yellow lab named Trooper. That was, actually, no, his dog was named Bruno. Colleen had a gold retriever named Trooper. Colleen McCurdy was another one of our canine handlers on the team that actually died. Drugs took her life. She died of a drug overdose. She had been overprescribed oxycodone and Oxycontin for 3 separate on-duty injuries. They overprescribed it, and it cost her life. She died. And an incredible trooper, man. So you got some incredible memories. And obviously stopping the vehicles with the dead bodies in them and solving a double homicide before it had ever been reported to local Greensboro authorities. We had it solved in Maryland. I tell you, man, there's some great cases out there solved at the traffic stop. And I can't tell you how many people we've stopped and we've been able to successfully roll on a traffic stop as informants, and they were murdered within days after the traffic stop because they lost a load of dope, and so many memories, out there, and great memories with Eddie Plank working Interdiction. And I had a pleasure to spend Saturday night with his mother and his sister with another group of people. They were cop survivors. And I was the speaker at a cops event just past Saturday night. And I stayed at a hotel with all these family members, but really got to spend a lot of time with Miss Sandy Plank and Eddie's sister, Kelly, and told them some wonderful stories about their son and how truly successful he was, stories that they had never heard before, and Eddie was an awesome guy, but died doing what we love to do,
Yeah.
And by the way, he left behind a 7-month-old daughter and a young wife when he was murdered. Yeah.
That's awesome. You get to share those stories with them. That's memories that they'll have forever now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the last question we ask everyone, we teach for a company called Justice Academy. What is your definition of justice?
I think that can be defined in a number of ways. I believe without a doubt that as a sworn law enforcement, and I'm going to say this to every cop, as a sworn law enforcement officer who has endured the pain of basic law enforcement training, you've not only earned the right to wear the badge, but you've earned the right to police your township, your city, your community, your county, your state. You've earned that right. So many people squander that right, that privilege to serve the citizens. So many of them want justice every day. Justice for a citizen could simply be you stopping a car that's just blown past everybody, and suddenly you get that car on radar at 91 miles an hour, and you stop that car and you write them a ticket. How many people you think drive by that traffic stop, can you say, hell yes, justice, justice. They're getting exactly what they deserve. They just blew me off the road. Justice, prime example. I just met with my prosecutor today over a case that I want this guy indicted next week over homicide that happened in my county. I was on the scene of that homicide within a minute from the time the call came out with my deputies. When I got there, 3 of my deputies were already there. Suspect was seated behind the driver's wheel of a white Ford F-150 with tan trim, had a cap on the back of it. He had been shot 13 times. And I grabbed his mother when she responded to the scene, took her off to the side because I didn't want her seeing her son, but I promised her we would get justice for her son's murder. We now have more than enough evidence not only indict, but to convict. And calling his mother today at 20 minutes after 11, it's actually 11:21 when I called her to let her know we are going to indict this guy next week. She said, thank God, justice. Thank God. I hope justice prevails. And I've said justice will prevail. So people have different ways of defining justice. Justice for me personally is, and I mean this without a doubt, justice for me is being able to pass on my institutional knowledge of traffic stops, high-risk traffic stops, interdiction, and hidden compartments to the tens of thousands of cops that I believe I have influenced in my career. That is justice. I've passed that on. It doesn't die with Mike Lewis. It doesn't die up here in my mind. It doesn't die when I'm laid into a casket. I could leave her tonight and get struck and killed. But at least I know that I've imparted this knowledge, this institutional knowledge that I believe has been institutionalized because of what you've built, what I've built. And we have a job, we have a duty and responsibility as instructors to pass that knowledge on to an ill-informed law enforcement profession. And I'm determined to do just that. I'm determined. And I got to tell you, Kenny, my teaching and training and traveling all the time was used against me 19 years ago when I was running for sheriff. 19 years ago when I was running for sheriff. Those other candidates running said, if he gets elected sheriff, he'll be gone all the time. He travels all over the world teaching and training. You will not have a sheriff in this county. He'll be gone all the time. And I hit it head on. You can rest assured, if I get elected as your sheriff, I will continue to teach and train because I now have a duty and responsibility to train the entire Wicomico County Sheriff's Office on what I have perfected here in this county. I would train them all to do it. I'll train a whole army of men and women to do it. And I got overwhelmingly elected and have run unopposed ever since.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't think you have any issues going forward as long as you want to be in that position that you're in. And I love that answer. That is different from everyone else but meaningful. Again, man, I could sit here and talk to you all day. So I truly appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, if you want to ever jump on again, maybe later on. I know you're super busy all the time, but yeah, I love talking to you. So anytime you're willing, I'm willing.
Hey, Ken, sincerely, thank you for all you do for our law enforcement profession, my friend. Keep doing what you do best. I love your style. I love what you do. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. You bet. Thank you.